All right, the extra juice, man. Thank you so much. And that is why we have you here today, Ziggy. Thank you so much for hopping on, dude. You just came back from a trip to GGG HQ. What are the vibes like there, man? How was the trip? Any extra insights for us here today about Path of Exile 2?
Yeah, g'day, mates. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I love the trips I do to New Zealand. I've been doing those for 8 years or something now, ever since I'd been streaming Pee-wee for, I think it was maybe 2 years, I think, when we did that first trip or something. And it's always so much fun. There's such, like, exciting people to talk to. Like, they're so excited to show you what you're doing, what they're doing, what they're working on. They're like, come look at this.
Yeah.
I remember even the first time very first time I ever went around there, I was just like watching Chris at the time, just kind of like speed walk around the studio, being like to go see what some dev was working on, and then go over to the other side of the studio. It's like they have like things that they can message each other on the computers, but he's got to
They like to
speed walk
zoom
around
over,
the office.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got to do it. And it's that same energy is carried through to today, and just even despite like the office growing in size massively, and now like Jonathan and Mark taking the leadership, they've just taken to the roles so well. I think they seem to be leading things very well. Like, I'm sure learning a lot about like the managing a team side of things, because that's newer for some of them. But like Mark, for example, went from a dev role to what he does now, which is still a lot of dev, but also a lot more like managing a big team. And they were more so than I've ever seen them, like
Really?
tired and and busy, more so than I've ever seen. They were definitely like the trailer. I think Jonathan mentioned in another recent interview that trailer came in hotter than ever. Like, it's not unusual for the trailer to kind of be like done the day before and then like do another recut because like, they noticed something that was off or something they want to fix. Or they make a change and then they're like, oh, we gotta redo that because now we actually changed how that works. So it's like, oh, we changed the floss, reshoot everything. Yeah, the trailer. I gotta give a special shout out to the people who do the trailer editing because, oh my lord,
That was a meaty
definitely
one.
yeah, that was a huge reveal stream. Longest we've done so far, longest Q&A by far. I didn't even realize it went for 2.5 hours. I was distraught when I realized how long I'd kept them in there for.
Really?
I think I just stopped because I realized we were all physically exhausted, but I like didn't kind of realize until that 2.5 hour mark, and then yeah, I was like, okay, we probably should wrap this up.
What did it look like the day before? Do you guys do like a stage check almost? A dev check the day before
did
to
do
make sure everything's good?
Yeah, because they actually got a new studio, like in-house studio built for doing this sort of thing now. So it was pretty funny. The last trip I did for the previous league reveal, it was the day before, and Jonathan was like, "Can we do like a multi-camera angle thing?" And the people who do the camera stuff and the tech and all that, where they were like, the day, okay, all right, sure, we'll give it a shot.
Not now.
So I loaned them my camera stand, and they pulled out an extra camera, and we tried to make it work, and it kind of worked, but also I think there was some issues with it. But like that seemed to be the inspiration for them to take it to the next level. So I go there this time expecting, oh, they've probably worked out those kinks. They probably have their own camera stand now. I go there, and they have like they have obtained another level of the building. They've almost taken over the entire thing.
Wow.
There's some like little accountant's firm or something next to them. Like their office is shrinking as GGG takes over the building, and they have like a really nice cozy studio now. Like it's its own room and everything. And it was I think it turned out really good too. Like I think the Q&A looked really nice, and they're able to film like various, like when Jonathan talks to the camera for the reveals and stuff, and it was really good. Sound and everything was great. We didn't have to hold mics. That was great.
That's the nice part, no mics blocking faces or
Yeah.
anything. The aesthetic was nice. The Ascendancy art in the background too. I really
Yeah,
liked
it looks good, and it was very cozy, and that really helped, like just added to the vibe of us just having a good time chatting, because that's what it definitely feels like in the moment, and that's why I can go 2.5 hours just talking to them like that without like realizing that the time has passed. Because I mean, when we're not doing that, that's like what a lot of the time I do on the I spend on the trip is kind of like doing that effectively, just in a more informal setting. Like I sit in Jonathan's office, and he excitedly shows me the like very early draft of the trailer that's like super janky. And then Mark's kind of popping in and he's like adding some little things and he's like, we got to fix that. And then they start out having some conversation about something. And I'm just going to like, I just give them a little poke about one particular aspect. And they're like, oh yeah, well, they end up designing an ascendancy there.
You teased us the day before saying, you know, oh man, everybody's going to be wowed tomorrow, essentially.
Yeah.
When you saw that first draft in Jonathan's office, what do you think there's one thing that really stuck out to you as just players are going to love this?
So that was the roughest cut I've ever seen.
Oh, really? The day before? Oh my god.
Yeah, normally. Oh, I saw it. So I got there 2 days before. I saw it 2 days before, and I got to see kind of the evolution of it over time as well, which was really cool.
Oh.
That was the roughest cut I ever seen, and in particular, something you don't realize is the big impact things like music have as well. So they music and audio passes done last on content like that, and so we were watching this whole thing with like boss fights with no music, and there's like weird awkward cuts and and like some stuff that just doesn't make sense, and like it'll be like a line like one that I remember. I hope Jonathan doesn't mind me saying this, but one was like a pack of monsters comes down the elevator, and then like a single monster comes down the elevator, and he's like, how is that what why is this happening? So he's like furiously messaging someone, being like, "Is this a bug? What's going on?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's bugged. We're gonna get that fixed." So they get that fixed for the next reshoot it, and they're like, "Yes." He's like, I saw him watch it later, and he's like, "Oh, a pack of monsters comes down the elevator." Anyway, I totally went off topic there. What was my kind of like?
What was one thing that you thought was like, wow, players are really going to be impressed by this when you saw the first cut?
So I tweeted that line, and I didn't at the time realize the connection between. I said something pretty similar. The only time I said something really similar to that was when they revealed 5 more acts than what they were planning. And I remember that moment of sitting there and just being like, it like showed me Act 5, and I was like, yeah, that was sick. And they're like both looking at me weird, and I'm like, are you guys looking at me like that for? Chris and Jonathan are looking at me, and then like Act 6, and then it goes 7, 8, 9, 10. And I was cacking myself, and it was kind of a similar thing here, because it just kept going. The video just kept going, and that was my experience with both of them. I was like, oh cool, that was the end of the video, that was sweet. I start talking to him, I was like, wait, it's still going. And that was so they like showed some of the basic endgame stuff, and I'm like, yes, they did it. They got endgame in. They got mapping in. It's not like a placeholder. Oh, cool. They bridged the gap with a second difficulty. That makes sense. Great, cool. And then they're like, oh yeah, and we got actually more, almost as much content as PV1. It feels like, or it felt like when I was watching it.
Yeah, dude, that was one of the things that surprised me. After they set expectations about a month earlier, the leak of, oh, it's only going to be 3 acts, right? I was starting to temper a little bit, and I was thinking, okay, we're going to get the acts.
I was so tempered.
Right? A little bit of endgame maps. I think you said like, oh, a skeleton of maps, and then you get all that. That's crazy that they managed to do that. There's even a Pinnacle boss that I'm asking everybody their thoughts on what the Pinnacle boss is. I heard on the Q&A that you may have received a peek, so I'm not going to ask you. I don't want any spoilers.
Oh, no. Oh, did I?
Did you?
Maybe.
You said you saw like a preview of maybe it's not the boss, but the area.
Oh, I did see a couple secret things. I don't know that I saw the Pinnacle boss, Pinnacle boss. I have a blessing, right? Okay, so I have a special power. It's a superpower. I have a terrible memory if I don't intentionally commit something to my memory. So
really,
whenever they show me something that they're like, this is super secret, I just like, I enjoy it, and then I immediately forget about it. Like, no joke. Like I remember like some vague detail about one of the things they showed me, but it immediately flees my mind as I focus on the things that I'm like trying to focus on for the Q&A and whatnot. Right. To prep for that, and and the content I'm going to make and all that stuff, it just gets pushed out of my brain straight away. So I'm pretty good at that. It's actually really good when I have like favorite TV shows I want to watch again, because I just wait like a year and then I can watch them again. That's basically brand new.
Hey, like Lord of the Rings, if Lord of the Rings fan, you can just rewatch those every few. You're not.
Oh yeah.
You are.
I've probably watched those enough to commit to memory though.
Oh right, exactly. Yearly
more than a few watchings of that one.
Yeah.
It was not this time. I'm disappointed I didn't keep up my tradition. It's almost a tradition every time I go to New Zealand to watch Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh really? You were very busy.
I did last time. Yeah.
Super busy, dude. And you're right. It's like the biggest reveal that they've seemingly ever done. Now, I've not been around for as long as you have. Your channel, it's basically a catalog of Path of Exile. I don't know if you realize this. It's a catalog of the history of grinding your games in Path of Exile. Like there are videos from 2011, 2012 of you like
Yeah.
standing outside, interviewing Chris and Jonathan and the like, and just the evolution
Yeah.
through the years. It's fascinating to see. From your perspective, watching them grow from a company of 3, 4 people into what they are today. I mean, how does it feel? What are your thoughts on that before we dive into some more PoE2 specific stuff?
Yeah, I think when I first went around, it was like kind of just after they'd almost just left their garage days. It was when I kind of first ran around there. So
Yeah.
I started playing when they just added the Vile boss to Act 2, which is hilarious. I was thinking about this yesterday. Someone had commented about it, and and I was just thinking, oh man, we were so scared of what was basically a vacuum cleaner back then. That was peak bossing content. I was just thinking about. I feel like I need to get some side by side footage of like us fighting the Vile boss back in the day of Act
Mm-hmm.
2 versus like I don't know, the Act 1 boss right now for PoE2, just because the difference is so hilarious for that juxtaposition's amazing.
Right.
So yeah, I went around maybe a couple years in, and Amy and I were just like, let's go to New Zealand, and we'll just tell them we're going to New Zealand under our own steam, and just be like, can we go? Can we come in? I'm like, I don't know. We've never done something like this. You should sign an NDA. What if you leak? Okay, we'll take a risk on this. And we went in. It was such a good time. Made some very fun content, and
Yeah.
made some friends with some of the devs and stuff. And they were certainly much smaller then. I'm trying to remember what their team size was. Maybe like 30 or something then, 30 or 40.
Yeah.
Just kind of spitballing there. And now it's like well over 100, I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to
Right.
think. They might have even been in their old office when I first ran around, or maybe it was when they just first moved to this one. They certainly only had one floor at that point.
Yeah. Blossomed into something wild, man. And now we're on the cusp. I think my timer up 4 days, 22 hours until Path of Exile 2
I try not to
early
watch
access
that.
beta comes out, and the entire community and the gaming industry, I swear I've never seen Path of Exile in the limelight like it is today and this week especially. Given that we're probably going to have record breaking numbers, something that I was surprised to hear Jonathan wasn't expecting. He was expecting league launch numbers.
Oh yeah, I wasn't expecting them to get over league launch. I mean, it's free to play league launch. We just had the biggest one of all time,
Yeah.
pretty much, and versus like paid beta, not even the actual launch of the game. So I completely underestimated that, and I think they probably did the same, right? Like I thought, oh yeah, maybe we get close to that,
Yeah.
but they seem to have exceeded it by a large margin.
Oh, most definitely. And it's just positive impressions everywhere. I'm seeing very few people now skeptical about the game. But we know, as
It's
people who have been covering it for a while, this is early access. We know there's going to be broken stuff in the game, there's going to be bugs. What do you think people's expectations should be as they log in on December 6th? Then, the week after.
I've prepared something for the day one experience.
Oh?
I believe it's this image here. It's like just like looking for a background image. I was like, oh, that will be handy at some point, I bet.
Oh, very true.
I would just say, okay, two things. I think they should release the passive tree early. Originally, I was actually against that idea, but if the servers are on fire, which they probably will be, if we have the passive tree, it'll be passive tree planning day, and it'll be fun. So go in expecting passive tree planning day, or have a backup plan. I do recommend having a backup plan for that day. I don't know, start a Factorio factory or something like that.
No,
keep you busy in the background. Wait.
That's a good idea
yeah.
because they seem really nervous about the servers at this point.
I mean, you would be, wouldn't you? Right? Like,
right. Well,
I was learning about load testing stuff recently. It's like far more complicated than what you think as like a outsider to this sort of tech. Like, I figured load testing is like, oh yeah, you just like tell Amazon to send a bunch of bots at the server. Surely that's fine, but it's far more complicated. It turns out to do that. They like need to like custom engineer solutions to like be able to appropriately load test the same way that players need to try to like all log onto a server at the same time. It's like really actual difficult tech problem. So they've never had to do anything on this level. I mean, they've had very clean league launches lately.
Exactly.
After a history of like almost comically reliable server fires at league launch, just because that's the reality of launching an online game. So the fact that they've gotten that clean recently is good. They have the skills and they have the tech there potentially to do it, but this is a whole other level. So
Yeah.
we'll
Ultimatum
fully
was
fully have a backup plan. The best advice I
yeah,
saw was like take the second day off, right? Like take the second day of the
right.
beta off work, not the first day.
Well, man, GGG, they're gifting the gaming community, who I assume lots of people have jobs. I mean, it's launching on a Friday night here in the States. I know it's going to be a Saturday, Sunday, most of the rest of the world. That's really nice. So I do agree with you. If you only have one day to take off, I'd probably take off that Monday, right? Or the
Yeah,
Tuesday, right?
yeah, not a bad idea.
Assuming we get in the week during the weekend. You've played Path of Exile too. I think you get more hands-on time when you go to GGG's offices, or is it only a few hours at a time? Or do you get to play for like maybe 7, 8 hours during each of these trips?
I think on this recent trip, I probably did about 8 hours total, spread over
Okay.
about 2.5 days. So it was just
Okay.
kind of just here and there in between doing other
So you've
things and prepping the Q&A and everything.
yeah, so you've had a lot of hands-on time with PoE. Did you get to play any of the end game?
No, definitely
No,
not. I didn't really want to like
that makes
jump on
sense.
a character that was already pre-made because I feel like that's a really bad way to experience the game. I just I don't think that would have really done anyone any favors. I don't like.
Yeah.
I have done a lot of like reflection on this. I know this topic's very current right now on what sort of content to make when you have access to a game before it's people are able to play it. Like, what content is actually going to enhance people's experiences with it versus detract from it. That's something I think about a lot. keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
I'm thinking about like the long term, and I'm thinking about not robbing people of something fun. And I
yeah.
just think like, what content could I actually make from an end game? So I probably, if I'd pushed for it or asked for it, they probably would have let me. But if I'd had this discussion with them, I'm pretty sure we would have arrived at the same conclusion that like, what would I actually make that would enhance people's experience? I don't want to
It
make like a full act walkthrough. I don't want to make a end game like a guide to here's all the end game bosses and their attack patterns and stuff like that. Like, that's not going to help anyone. But
no.
what I have been doing is like stuff that I think will either get people more excited about the game because I live for that, and that's like directly kind of paying GGG back for the years of game that they've given me is by helping them sell their game a bit
Yeah.
more, or be like identifying points where I think people will bounce off. So players might be like new players, especially to the genre or to the game, might get stuck somewhere or not understand something and then have less fun because of it, be a bit confused, not understand kind of the extra fun that they could be having, and then bounce off the game and not come back because that's devastating. So that's why I did like a here's how the trials work guide, because that I think is like confusing as.
Yeah.
I actually sent so many messages back and forth, had so many in-person conversations before I figured it out. I think even some of the GGG people I talked to were a bit confused. The new system's a little confusing. So I was like, okay, that's a thing you can cover. That's actually going to enhance experiences. So yeah, no end game. I did Act 1 and maybe 2/3 of Act 2.
Oh, very
Just
nice.
on a
Okay.
playthrough on Mercenary. Yeah.
Yeah, well that's awesome, and thank you for the trials video. I haven't watched it yet, but you did ask some questions that clarified my thoughts on the trials, because from the video I was a bit confused still. I thought you had to do at least one of them each, like you had to do a Trials of Sakema and then Trials of Chaos to get your 2 points, but you could get those 2 points like in any order. But no, you can
There's
just go all the way through and ascend fully
Yeah,
through
there's
either
absolutely
trial.
still some nuance to it to figure out.
Yeah,
But you can get your ascendancy unlocked in your first 2 points in any of them, in the first difficulty of them, which
yep,
will be like the first floor of them in
right.
the kind of terminology of the Trial of the Sekimas. For the chaos, it'll be like X amount of waves or whatever.
Waves. Hmm.
But there's still some nuance to figure out. Like, I didn't say, oh, here's going to be the optimal routes or
Oh
the
yeah,
optimal leveling strategies or any of that, because that's again not the sort of thing I wanted to make out of that. But it's when it comes to it actually gets simpler when it comes to getting your additional points, because those will just happen through keys that you'll get at certain levels.
right.
And then you'll be able to have a bit more choice into which one you just go into. There is an element of and I wonder if this is something they'll change through the beta or something that they'll review or identify as an issue, or maybe it will be not that big an issue. But there is an element of the fact that the Trial of the Seconds is an Act 2. It is your first choice, it's your earliest choice, and thus it's the only choice if you want to get your ascendancy, as soon as possible, which
Right away.
you do. So there is that element there, but in theory you could get them anywhere.
Yeah. And it's the first
Later
floor.
points will be more choice.
It's probably not.
Yeah.
It's not going to be that bad. I can see, floors 2, 3, 4 building up with the boons and afflictions and the like, and getting harder and harder. But floor 1, I mean, Sanctum is pretty darn easy for most people.
It's for me at a slow pace to do that, and but that's always, you have to take that stuff with a grain of salt. Obviously, I'm somewhat experienced. I'm not overly good at the game, but I am knowledgeable in a broad sense of the game. So I have that experience to draw on. I've played Sanctum, so someone who hasn't played Sanctum and maybe it takes them a couple of tries, could take a bit longer certainly, but I did feel like it was definitely a superior experience to PoE1 Sanctum, massively so.
How about the Labyrinth? I presume you're just seeing it as a pure upgrade on that too.
Oh yeah, it's an immense upgrade of the Labyrinth.
Don't scoff that hard, man.
Of the Labyrinth. I think the concept of the Labyrinth is really cool. Like, I think Azara is kind of a cool character, and this idea of like heading into this like ancient mechanism thing that's like some long-standing legacy of some process that they had that doesn't really make sense anymore, but you can still kind of go in there and go through this like long lost technologies and stuff. Like, that stuff's really cool, but it just really comes down to it was I guess it was a couple things. The traps were annoying. Like, they stop you a lot. You're sort of sitting there waiting for doors to open. You're sitting waiting for the spikes to go down. There was far less to know of that, really. Like, you still have to time moving through some traps, but only in the trap rooms. They're not, all the rooms don't have traps, only the trap rooms do. So they're like 1 in 4 rooms, I guess, as a rough estimate. And
you can choose them, right?
Yeah, and you can, or you can choose to avoid them, potentially. And the other thing is just that it was the same content. There wasn't much variety in it ultimately. And I guess inherently being maze-like, it can be a bit annoying too. Although by this point, you kind of, if you've been playing PoE since Ascendancy came out, you probably have a second nature about the pathing of the lab, like I think a lot of us do. But yeah, it's certainly a massive upgrade of a lab, just because there's going to be so much more content, if nothing else.
Between
the 3 different things. Even just one of them is probably more content.
Yeah. Yep. And there's a Triceratops too in the Trial of Chaos, which is pretty cool. I can't wait to fight that thing. It shoots a laser out of its mouth.
Okay, I was gonna say, was there much of the laser Triceratops in the trailer? Because
1 second.
because I was watching Jonathan just show me some stuff. He was like showing me like just firsthand in person, and there was a laser Triceratops, and it did a big laser beam, and it was charging around. I was like, he was explaining something to me. I completely tuned out of what he was saying. I was just like, Laser Triceratops.
Dude, it looks so cool.
I thought of you later. I was like, oh yeah, Tri's gonna like that. But,
yeah, 100%. Huge fan
I was like,
of it.
oh my god, you have to get that in the trailer.
Right, get it in the trailer. Dude, can you imagine the Spectre builds based on it? Because I think it's a mob. It's not a boss, right?
Yeah, no, it's just a regular, like, it's one of those, it's the perfect example of those white monsters that actually are a substantial encounter. But yeah, and they'll often be the sorts of things that are elevated to rares because they want the rare fights to be more interesting. So yeah, they were very cool. Obviously, it's like kind of cheesy, like kind of corny, the idea of like laser Triceratops. But I was blown away by like how cool it looked, like the way it moved and everything. I was like, oh my god, the animation team is just blowing us away here. Like,
truly,
good heavens, rigging, well done, rigging artists.
Yes. Everything looks very crisp. I mean, in the art book too. I saw it in the art book. It shows all the concepts for a lot of the monsters. That's in there. Oh yeah, it looks great. And that seems to be a commonality in all the gameplay footage that we're seeing that's coming out from like the LA event, from your time in New Zealand. You recently, I think yesterday, put out a mercenary video. Holy crap, Ziggy, dude, blew up. It's at like 120 public facing views.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's going crazy.
It seems like I kind of gave people, because I was reflecting on the first video I made and some things that I did in that I didn't like a little bit, so I changed a little bit for this one. And I definitely like racked my brain over that one a little bit, because I was like, is this a guide? Is this too much of a guide? Like, this is a showcase, but I'm also like, I'm sharing what I did in my experiences, and what like kind of my thoughts were from that, which are recommendations effectively. And I might have even been like, some point I'm like, oh man, this was so good, you've got to try this. So like, that's a recommendation, that's a guide, right? I was really like laboring over this, but yeah, it seems like the structure of that, and people wanted to see some mercenary and people wanted to see some explosions, so I gave them some explosions.
Dude, you
So
did.
yeah,
And
apparently
people I've
people are
talked
excited.
to who played it, like Subtract him. I talked to Sub last night, and he said the early game, and we're talking the first 5 minutes of Mark, just put him off completely. I almost think that that could be a quit moment for a new player. If they like choose the mercenary, they pop in, they're dealing with the reloading and all the like. How did that feel to you, and how did you like push past that to go into what we saw in that video where you're just going ballistic with all these
Yeah,
mercenary skills that look awesome, honestly?
so yeah, I had to go and watch that Subtractum video after, because I'd heard people mention that like he kind of like effectively rage quit Mercenary. I was like, oh wow, that must have been like he must have had a really rough experience with it. So I did. I watched his, and he was like doing the Devourer and quit over and swapped to a Sork. He's like, this is not the playstyle I want. I
Right.
get that. So I even say in my video, like in the first 20 minutes or so are a little difficult, because it's partly like the fact that you're reloading, you don't have access to many skills is part of it. But it's really also that it's such a fundamentally different playstyle to anything we've actually ever had. So it comes down to the fact that it's prepared rather than kind of reactive on demand. Like you spend mana before combat a lot of the
Right.
time, because you spend mana when you reload, not when you cast the skill. The skills are instant nearly, like for the crossbow skills, because you just apply the bolt. So they've really like captured the essence of how a crossbow differs to a bow, right?
Mhm.
You it's about like loading ahead of time, and then you click and fire. But that means that if you play poorly, especially early on when you have few tools at your disposal, you will run into many situations where you get overwhelmed. And I said that. I said early in the game, you have to really think about how you engage. So I went into Mercenary, like I knew it was going to be super different. And I already knew from previous experience with Path of Exile, especially on builds that were a bit harder, where like you had to really think about how you engaged packs. So I went in with a mindset that I think worked really well. But even then, like I said, still that first 20 minutes is an adjustment period. I did find probably has been overstated or just not fully understood by many
It is very
people.
different.
And
Mhm.
I think you kind of get into a much smoother gameplay very very quickly. I
Yeah.
was like on reflection, I was like, oh man, that was pretty awkward at the start, but how long was that actually for? Oh, that was like for 2 zones.
Mm. Mhm.
It was actually only 2 zones in the end, that kind of like I had that before it started to get real smooth, because you actually
What
get those
clicked?
extra skills pretty quick.
The extra skills, that's what made it click, you
Yeah, I
think?
think it was a combo of maybe getting 2 extra skills, because you start with just fragmentation rounds, then you pick up 1 extra skill, which I picked up the permafrost bolts, which was one of the ones I was like, you got to get this skill. So
Mhm.
good. Cold shotgun freezes everything. Okay, so
Oh, yeah.
taking that first definitely I think contributed to my like improved experience a bit as well, because you freeze monsters, you slow them and freeze the monsters, so that gives you a bit more time to prepare and think about like the things that your preparation, your loading, your movement, where you're positioning, all that sort of stuff. So I do think like people who don't think about, like if you go into a pack without thinking about how you're positioned, are you prepared, what skills are you going to use in what situations, having some
Mhm.
sort of kind of like analytical nature to your tools and how you're going to use them, then you're not gonna have the tools available that you need when you'll get swarmed and surrounded, and you'll do a dodge roll when you're reloading, and then that so you won't reload because you dodge rolled. So then you'll want to fire and you will have to reload.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
So
is that early game progression feeling in terms of monster difficulty? I remember when we played in March in LA, it was pretty damn tough, at least for me. I know some people were speeding through with ease. I was struggling. I've talked to people and it seems like they've smoothed out that curve at least a
massively,
bit in the first few
massively.
areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's far better tuned now.
Okay.
Uh like the bulk of balancing sort of stuff and a lot of this tuning is going to happen in the beta, I still think.
Yeah.
But compared to earlier builds that I played that were like some of the earliest builds I played were like really awful. Like they were tuned so badly. And I was like, oh man, I love your vision here, but you've got a ways to go before this is something that people will be able to enjoy without putting like a ton of work in. It's
Mm.
crossed over the hill now where like I can confidently say that this is a far more accessible game than Path of Exile 1, despite being very difficult still. And it's actually really made me think about what's the difference between accessibility and difficulty, and how much of Path of Exile 1's difficulty is based on poor accessibility. Like, I
Mm.
think so much of PoE 1's challenge is just trying to make sense of everything.
Yeah.
And the obtuseness of how stuff works, and downloading all the third party things, and trying to understand how all these systems come together, and having a billion different crafting things that interact and all that stuff. And I love it. Like I revel in it after a decade, but for new players to try and get into that, even for somewhat experienced returning players or whatever, it's so tough. So the tuning is far better now, and it comes down to I definitely think they've like balanced the early game monsters a lot better, rounded out the skills a lot more. One of the complaints I remember having from an early build was like, we don't get enough skills to be able to find the tools that we need to deal with the problems we're having. So
Yeah.
there was a really big time lag before you could solve a problem. They have fixed that massively. You get a lot of uncut gems. You still make choices because there's that leveling system they did, which was really brilliant, because now you have the idea, okay, I can gain a bit of incremental power on skills that I know are really working for my build, or these skills aren't working for my build. I'm having this problem. How do I solve this? And you have the tools to do that. Like, you nearly always have an uncut gem or have one coming very soon. Plus the exploration stuff, that really helps, especially players that are struggling. You're struggling, you explore a little bit more, you find a rare chest, you find one of those handcrafted rares that drops an uncut support gem. And then on top of that, the currency changes made a big difference too.
Yeah,
So
go into that.
tons more. Yeah,
Yeah.
so they made it so that transmutes, augments, regals, and exalts are really common. Regals were the bottleneck for the most part, but those are farmable, which is quite interesting. So I'm going to probably digest that a lot more and think about that soon. Might be something to make a video on
Farmable.
even.
Are they like a vendor recipe? Are you saying like you can
When
disenchant
you
certain items?
disenchant rares, they turn into regal shards. So
Okay.
10 rares equals a regal, which is like that seems like a lot of rares, and initially it kind of is. But they are very important, and because you actually are kind of like, I was rolling in exalts almost, so it was really thinking about, okay, what magics do I have that are really good enough to elevate to a rare, so that I can chuck a few exalts on it, and how much impact will those exalts have? So I was really thinking about it for once. It was tickling my brain in a really
Yeah.
good way, but also I just had lots of I was using this stuff. I was able to use this stuff constantly. The mixture of being able to decide kind of like, oh, do I need to go for more gold? So I'm vendoring things to try and fill out my empty slots, versus am I disenchanting to get more transmutes and then later regals? And then I was using the vendors, I was using the disenchanting, I was using it all. Like, I was using all of the tools, and they started to work together in harmony, which
Nice.
was not the case in the earlier builds. So they've
Hmm.
really started to figure it out a lot more.
You didn't have enough in the earlier builds from what I saw. I mean, I
There was
wasn't
like no,
getting any
it was
items.
nothing. It was like playing Ruthless in the earliest
Yeah,
builds. We had
definitely.
nothing.
Something that
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody ask them. We know we see Ritual in Act 1 appear in one of the
Mhm.
areas. Do we know if that's just thematic for that particular zone, or are we going to see stuff like Ritual and Breach and maybe even Delirium earlier on before encountering them in Endgame? I can't believe I didn't ask
Um,
Jonathan. Did you talk to them about that?
so the ritual stuff is a story beat without going into any spoilers.
Okay.
It is an important side element, um,
Okay.
where you unlock important character progression stuff.
Okay.
So if you see, if you will encounter a ritual as part of your like moving through the core zones, the core path, if you will. But it kind of sets you up for a thread that you can then go and follow. So unlock some very important player power and have a cool side area that's pretty challenging.
Cool.
So that's a thing for ritual specifically. So it's also going to be an end game feature. I don't
Right.
think it'll be present anywhere else in the campaign, based on the fact that it's a story beat at that specific location and how
Got
that
it.
works.
Okay.
Yeah. But as for the other things, I couldn't say, except that essences do appear. I'm pretty sure essences made it into my explosive, my Grenadier build video.
Okay,
Granted,
very
not
cool.
the
Because I was
end.
wondering if we were going to get those other crafting elements before we get through that
Yes.
second campaign playthrough to
Yeah.
expose people to it before Endgame, right?
And that was pretty big too. That was definitely like a tool that started to happen, that started to appear at the right moment. Like I was like, right when I was starting to think, okay, I'm pretty bottlenecked on regals. I really need to start solving some more specific gearing problems here. Essences show up, bam, like right at that exact moment. Like they've thought about this.
They
It was
dropped it
about
in while they
partway.
were watching you.
Yeah. It was almost like they were anticipating my thought processes, I think, which
Oh, they're
is
pretty
just
smart.
yeah, just this iterative process they've been having. Well, hold on.
Yeah. It's
Oh
it's
my
all
eye.
so exciting, dude. And
Yep.
when you played, I don't know, or talking to the devs, exploration seems to be a really big facet of the game.
Mhm.
I mean, just the end game itself, all the possibilities, all those nodes that we might get to explore seem fantastic. Did you notice any other little pockets in the areas when you were exploring them? Maybe
Yeah,
differences compared to March
definitely.
or June and now?
Yeah, they've been adding more and more stuff in terms of exploration. You know, we've seen a
Okay.
taster of that in Path of Exile 1, where they're just adding cool little bits
Yeah.
to PoE1. They've done it in Path of Exile 2 much more so, but also in a way that's also like subtle. It's more subtle. So there will be handcrafted um, mechanical things, preset encounters, hidden things, even stuff that you don't even recognize as a specific encounter in maps, in zones, as you're playing through the campaign. And you don't even realize that they were a thing, but that they were there and they were placed kind of there or intended to be somewhere in a zone under certain conditions if you kind of needed it as well. Like it's super clever. So,
Oh,
okay, this probably doesn't make much sense, but so there's some very very subtle clever things at play here, and it really plays into this idea of like catch up mechanics and balancing out like wildly different player skill levels and knowledge levels in a way that doesn't detract from experienced players. And this is the real, I think, brilliance. I did harp on this in one of my kind of Q&A, like one of my interview videos I had with them, because it's such an interesting concept and I think still people don't really know about or fully understand, because it is kind of complex and subtle. But the idea is that, so you've got very experienced players and you've got newer players that are joining or returning players or literally people coming in off the street, never played a game before, right?
right.
Because they did testing on those people. There's like a company you can hire to get people off the street.
That's so
So they
cool.
did some of that. Yeah, they like watch them and you like see their facial reactions and stuff. Uh, so they've done that sort of thing. And how do you make the game so that those people have a fun time without ruining it for the experienced players? And there's a really clever solution here for these sorts of games, for action RPGs like this, and that's that it kind of naturally already happens that an experienced player wants to go faster, so they skip more things. They progress through the zones. They know where they need to go, so they don't end up going down side areas. They don't end up going down dead ends. They know where the exit's going to be. They build up this experience. They kill less because they know they don't need to kill more. They know they start to do value assessments like, oh, it's not worth me going and picking up that, or it's not worth me killing these trash. I'm just going to skip them because, there's far juicier targets down the line. They have these things, right?
Hmm.
So you can lean on that natural player tendency where they're doing that, but they're inexperienced players. They're full clearing every zone. They're spending an hour in every zone, right?
Yeah, an hour.
So
Yep. Uh-huh.
yeah, you can do things with that, and you can even have like fallbacks for if something doesn't work. So they have, and they mentioned this I think in the reveal where they added this system where there's rare and uncommon chests, magic and rare chests.
Yep.
These have more items in them. They are also more likely to give you things like currency and uncut skill gems and stuff. Those appear in dead ends. So that's a very simple one, right? Like the player who's struggling is exploring more because they need more XP. The next zone's too hard for them. Maybe they're farming an earlier zone, or maybe they're just spending a bit more time because they're feeling a bit nervous,
Oh yeah.
or they just don't know where to go,
Yeah.
and they run into these chests. They go down to dead end, they get that chest. But then there's preset sort of things where they've really considered like, okay, at this point we really want to make sure that people have a tier 2 flask. Most players will have gotten a tier 2 flask because like experienced players will know they need one. They got one from the vendor, or they saw one drop and they got it, or they got lucky or whatever. But for the
Hmm.
players who don't, what's a thing we can do here? Okay, well, we add this like witch with a cauldron, and she's just a round monster. It doesn't look like anything special. and her cauldron drops some flasks, and you're like, okay, cool. And it's like, also she drops an uncut support gem. So if you didn't get an uncut support gem earlier, you're gonna get one here. What if you miss? What if a player misses that witch? What if they don't run into her then, right? Well, then they're screwed, right? They didn't get that uncut support gem. It's like a snowball effect. They're getting weaker and weaker. They go into the next zone. They don't have the uncut support gem. They've got still tier 1 flasks. What happens? One of those side chests gets the uncut support gem. Like it teleports into the like they have these things that are like kind of contextual like that. What's the brilliance of this? It doesn't have any impact on the experienced players, on the veterans. Like their experience isn't hampered by this. Like maybe you're like, oh, they have a little bit easier. I don't know. Maybe there's some like elitist somewhere who like complains about that idea, that concept. But like, well, I mean, it's not like they're getting an advantage because they're still going to be way slower than you are.
Right.
They had to be suffering in order for this to happen. So it's kind of just builds into this naturally. It's really clever.
And it's
really
helping
clever.
those players feel really good when they find something like this. I mean, imagine full clearing an area.
And it is rewarding things.
Yeah,
it's rewarding than
is.
finding a rare and killing it, or finding a hidden area, or being an explorer, exploring, being a little clever. And I could rant about this for ages. There's like tons more things too. So it's like even some of them are like callback classical references. So if you played a lot of Diablo 2, you know that like in the crypts, the sarcophaguses and graves and things are a little bit more likely to drop certain things like jewelry.
Mm-hmm.
There's like subtle things like that. And it's like, well, yeah, we do that too. It's like that's in PoE too. So like the graves area and the little graves and the things like that, they are more likely to drop jewelry. Jewelry is really rare. It's really impactful. So if you haven't got any jewelry by that point, you've got empty slots, you're probably going to find a white ring in one of those.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, cool.
They're rare. Those rings, guys, they don't just drop from any monster. So you want to be clicking on those sarcophagi.
By the way, so good.
Again,
I really like that. By the way, the change, like managing to keep jewelry is feeling like quite rare and valuable.
Yeah, the second time I played in June, no jewelry found. I was shocked. We got to Act 2, and I was like, wow. There was a vendor though that had an amazing ring, dude. I was saving up all my gold for that ring. And then I think it swapped out for some reason. Do they still have the same mechanics where if you level up, the vendor changes?
I think it's like it might be a certain number of level ups or some other condition now. It's not just every level up.
It happened, and I was like, no, my ring, dang it. Yeah, but look through those sarcophagi. That's really cool. And I'm curious, Ziggy, do you think that they'll continue this sort of design? Not making seeded drops, but continue these clever sort of hints all throughout the endgame and the Atlas, because my mind ran wild now that they have this node system where they can determine how rare certain nodes are and have these special encounters and maps. I think they gave one cool example, what they're doing with Untainted Paradise, where it can spawn on like a coast and a mountain or a jungle, whatever that is, and it's crazy XP. My mind is running wild with what they can do with unique maps or unique encounters in Endgame with stuff like this.
I really have no idea what to expect with this, so that's amazing. But like, yeah, it seems like they can certainly take some of these concepts forwards. This sort of stuff I was just talking about with like these kind of catch-up mechanics and stuff. That is essentially a campaign-based thing. Like that's where that needs to be, and that's where that will be focused. But similar concepts and stuff can be applied in a broader sense. And I think maybe you might have touched on it there. If that sort of things was occurring, then it would be done on the the Grand Atlas kind of level potentially.
Right, little secrets and everything to find on the Atlas or something. Like
you can kind of extrapolate that concept of exploring to exploring that Atlas. Yeah,
and if they can put enough variations in there, it really will feel infinite. When Jonathan was talking about how vendor recipes aren't in PoE 2 anymore, really, and you have to go to special locations and form certain things together, I was thinking, oh, what if there's like a special bench that you can find in one node on the Atlas that spawns in this very specific location, and you'll just feel so good when you find it if you know what it is. And if you don't know what it is, you're like, oh, what is this map? I've never seen this map name before. What is this? Let's hop in, see what it is. Oh, I'm just
the vendor recipes is like such a good distillation of this entire concept, where like they're a pretty cool idea. They're a cute thing. They're also a catch-up mechanic. They're also like kind of a rewarding experienced players thing. So they do all these different things, but it's also like a really lame way of doing all those things. And it's also very obtuse too. It's another perfect example of like the obtuse kind of difficulty aspects of Path of Exile 1. If you
Mm.
have like to rely on something like a vendor recipe that's not like signaled in any way that they even exist in game,
Mm.
then,
I
then
weak beat every time, pretty much.
yeah. But having like things that kind of occur through actual gameplay is a way better way of doing that. So they effectively have converted the concept of vendor recipes into things in gameplay exploration, which is a
Right.
far more exciting way of doing it. And you can make it make more sense. You can make it more logical.
Yes.
Like, of course, like robbing the graves of people for jewelry is like literally a thing, right? That people have done. So like that's where you can get jewelry off all the nobles in the noble graves. You go to the noble quarter of the graveyard and steal their jewelry. It's like there's some logic to that kind of follows. So players can see that trend and start to form these theories. It's like there'll probably be like a bunch of theories of like, oh, this stuff drops here and this drops here. That would just be completely false because there's enough of it actually true in the game that people start to like think about these things and like, well, I mean, this area's got these things clearly, but it's just, confirmation bias. But that's brilliant. That's fun. That's cool.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't get solved too quickly,
Me neither. That's a top. I want to touch on that in just a moment. But since we're talking about the special nodes exploration angle, since you don't know, I would love to hear your guess on what the pinnacle hardest content in the game is. What is inside that obelisk labyrinth on the Atlas?
Well, okay, so my meme answer would be like another vacuum cleaner of some type. So we've had a Roomba, we've had an upright Dyson vacuum cleaner, maybe like a little handheld vacuum cleaner or something. So probably that to complete the trifecta. Or maybe they go a different angle. They go for like one of those Dyson fans that doesn't have blades. How do those things work? Whoa, that'll make a cool boss.
Good one. Good one.
But
maybe two vacuums? Like they just go double. Okay, two Roombas.
I mean, you're thinking way too little here for PoE2, I think. Probably like all of the Dyson vacuum cleaner range that assembles together in Voltron form to turn into like a mega vacuum. Something like that.
There you go.
But alternatively, I mean, what do we know? We know that there's like different factions kind of vying for this to get access to this tower maze thing that we can then climb. So what would they be vying for? It could be a fourth faction, it could be completely unrelated, it could be some historical thing. Definitely not super clear that it's like linked to any existing factions we know. I don't know, there's a lot of speculation there. Yeah, I'm just live processing, to be honest.
It's a pure guess, right? Like Neversink.
Yeah.
He said it could be Kalandra. The pillars, I guess, look kind of similar to the pillars from Lake of Kalandra with the hexagonal pattern and all that. I think Subtractum last night said
redemption arc
Cirrus.
for Kalandra after Kalandra League.
Right. He didn't even get to fight her,
I would
man.
be happy
She's got
for
to
her
come
to get
back.
a redemption. Yeah, they'd just be like, oh, this is just a reflection of Kalandra. That's why she was a bit lame in Kalandra League. I'll be like, oh, phew.
Here you go.
I hope they do that at some point.
The real Kalandra, right? Mark's like, hey, I got to make this. This is the most iconic Path of Exile item. Let's make this the most iconic Path of Exile 2 boss as well. That's my fantasy.
I mean, we all know it's going to be Zana up in there, though. She's sequestered herself away in there, trying to like defeat the evil exiles. And then we go and mess with her plans. Because we're, once again, probably evil, just like we are throughout Path of Exile's history. And she's the only goodie in entirety of Path of Exile. So it's probably Zana.
Well, on that point, we're going to hop a little bit around. The story of Path of Exile 2, it just seems very interesting from everything that we've heard and all the updates that they've made over the past 6 months. All the dialogue options that we, not options, but quirks or quips that we have from our characters that occur now based on ascendancy class and how the bosses interact. Do you think that this game is also going to be a good experience for those people who dove into Diablo 4, played the campaign, hopped out? Do you think it's worth that $30 to experience the Path of Exile story?
I'll say this. I couldn't even really tell you the plot of Path of Exile 1 after playing it for 10 years. But Path of Exile 2's plot, I actually am interested in and following. So that's probably a good sign. There seems to be some sort of plot that is an actual thing that I can follow. So that's really good. When it comes to action RPGs, I don't really care about plot. I care about having cool environments, having cool monsters, and just having like a vibe, characters that seem like interesting characters. I don't really need them to be doing much plotty stuff. I just need to be in a cool place to blow up monsters and collect loot. So that's all I really ever needed. And Path of Exile 2 is definitely delivering on that. But they do also seem to be doing a bit of a plot. And something happened after I watched that trailer, and I started asking Jonathan questions about the plot and how it connected to Path of Exile 1. And I started getting very interested.
Yeah.
I think we talked on that on the Q&A. I don't know.
You did. That's
But,
why I was like, oh
yeah.
man, Ziggy's going in on the story. I think it must have
Yeah, I was
grabbed
like,
him.
literally, I was far more engaged in all that stuff, and I'm looking forward to taking my time with my first PW2 playthrough in the beta and talking to the NPCs and stuff.
Oh yeah, in the
Um,
trailer, Kitten
yeah,
Cat
and
Noodle spotted a certain someone.
oh,
Yeah,
I mean, it was
a
in the trailer,
legend.
so it's fair
A
game.
legend in lore, Ziggy. I won't name it. Some people still think it's a spoiler, but they take
Okay,
center stage in that trailer, and it's like a mind blow for anybody who's being paying
is it
attention to
like the
Path of
gorilla
Exile
suit?
lore.
You don't see them like gorilla suit
They're
walking
in the
across the
first like
stage?
15 seconds. They're narrating the entire trailer. We hear them speak for the first time. Like there are div
Yeah.
cards about this person,
Go.
unique items.
Okay. Stop. We'll watch Kitten's noodles if we want
Very
the
excited.
laws. Yeah,
Yep.
that's cool. Well, so something that actually kind of really surprised me was when it comes to a beta, especially when it's not all the acts, I just expect the story is just going to stop at some point abruptly and not make any sense. Especially this like transition from the Act 3 story into Endgame, right? Jonathan showed me and told me how they're actually like going to great lengths to make the story make sense and cohesively flow in the beta, which is so like weird to me. But also when he explained it, I was like, oh, okay, that's actually probably a really good idea, because this will be a lot of people's first experience of the game who don't even really think about the fact that it's early access. To them, it's just a game launch. So for them, the fact that like a thing will happen at the end of Act 3 that will lead into Endgame and make sense will be probably a very good thing for the game. Like it'll make the plot feel maybe a bit more satisfying. Like obviously there'll be like some sort of cliffhanger, but to lead into Act 4, 5, and 6. But they're actually like thinking about like, oh, okay. And this was one of the problems. It's like, oh, well, we can't really just. They're trying to figure out what they do with the other acts when they add them, right? Because like, oh, if we just add Act 4, do we do that again? Do we try and make the story connect from Act 4? Like they're actually really thinking about this. Do we add all three at once? Do we wait for that? Like they're figuring this stuff out,
Yeah.
right? Because they want the story to make sense each time they do this, like each time they add new content. And that was just wild to me. I was very surprised about that. But
That makes me unbelievably happy. I was talking about that on stream last night because we're seeing all these people who don't know that the ARPG format really well, especially the old one that really isn't around anymore, where you play through the first 3 acts and then you do them again and then you go into Endgame, and they'll feel like once they finish the story, like over. And especially if it's a janky transition into Endgame where you're just thrust into whatever it's going to be after Act 6, they're going to be really confused by that. But they're going to lengths to make sure it's a smooth transition. Oh, that's so cool. I love it.
I do wonder what they're doing with the difficulty repeat, if they're doing some sort of story beat that leads into that, or if there's something that makes sense for that, or if like the story connection from Act 3 to Endgame only happens the second time around, maybe. So like if there's some differences in the second playthrough. I'll be very curious to see what they do with that. I don't know, to be clear.
Yeah.
So the way they're thinking about it, it seems like there'll probably be some consideration towards that side of things as well.
Yeah, dude. Well,
that's probably one thing I am worried about, is like the 3-act repeat for
yes.
non-action RPG players. It's super dated. It's obviously really suboptimal, but like it is the best choice they could have made, I think, to give us so much end game. Like that was the correct choice, and to do this repeat, because like it was either that or they just did like a kind of weird placeholder end game transitionary thing, like just maps to level, which they have done tests on that, and they said to me, it's like it doesn't work. Players don't do it. Like even their own like internal testers would like have a really hard time just doing this like nonsensical kind of like leveling through maps things to get to the actual end game. And like end game is designed to work at level 68 or whatever it starts at, that's there's a reason it's 2/3 of the way through the passes you get typically. Like it's actually pretty important. So yeah, they obviously had to do something like this, but I am worried about it though. I am worried about how new players will take to that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's something to watch as we begin playing in less than 5 days, man. We're approaching an hour right now. So Ziggy, I'm wondering, is there any other topic about Path of Exile 2 you'd like to touch on? Maybe for people like you who have been playing Path of Exile since the Val Oversoul was introduced. And a lot of people I know have been skeptical about Path of Exile 2. for a while. Looks like many people are on board now. Do you have any words for them about this game?
It's been very cool to watch the community transition from like, oh, we don't want to hear about Path of Exile 2, which I was like, was kind of like blowing my mind, but it was like, I get it. I get it. I've been able to play a bit. I've been able to engage with it more, so I was able to be excited. And the wait for me isn't like something that's diminishing it for me. So I got that, but now finally, like, people have been able to kind of unclench their hype barriers and let the juices flow. Ooh. And that's been really awesome to see, and just be able to like, I've been able to just kind of like breathe out a sigh of relief that like I can be excited without people being annoyed at me.
Yeah.
Which yeah, I know you've covered a bit of that too. So it's
Yeah,
it's good to be able to just be excited and people be excited along with you. I have a question for you, Talkative.
Oh,
How
yeah,
are you nervous about going into the beta in terms of like content creation, right? Because like this is a pretty big deal for you, and also kind of like the first, like you've been entirely hype train oriented for a while now. Now you're going to be playing the game, dude. Are you like, I would actually, I feel like I'd be nervous.
I am nervous, and the past week I've actually swapped my approach to Path of Exile 2. And thank you for asking me the question. I love it. I love the reversal. This is good. I, for the past year and a half, am very honest about the fact that I was milking all Path of Exile 2 information. I was reading all the Reddit posts, the Discord messages from all the devs, watching all the interviews, rereading the transcript, all that stuff to try to combine it all. Dude, the past week, I mean, I watched a little bit of your video. I watched one Dreamcore video about passives. I've watched no other gameplay. I don't know any of the keystones. I don't know the Act 3 bosses. I don't know the Act 2 end boss. I have gone cold turkey on ingesting all the brand new latest Path of Exile 2 info, and I'm just taking the high level stuff. And I almost feel a little selfish, but it's like, we're like 5 days away. Guys, I'm preaching it in my videos, like, just wait, just try to experience it as fresh as possible. I know I've been like feeding this to you for so long, but I want to go in, really see how it feels to experience all this really cool new content we're finally getting our hands on, and just be able to talk about it. I don't know what I'm going to do, Ziggy. Like, I have plans. I have spreadsheets of like video ideas, like, you know, my busted mercenary versus 50 bosses, and I can do a highlight reel of every boss fight. Like, oh, that's cool, right? Of course, he can cover the patches and how GGG is addressing community feedback, how you're going to react, how Ziz, how all these different people playing Pee-wee for the first time are going to react. You know, I have all these ideas floating around, but the moment I step in and start playing, I feel like it's all almost going to like wash away, or I'm going to like have these new ideas. I can lay as many plans as I want, but I won't actually know. Like, this hype train that I've been running has been going really damn well. You're the 12th person I've sat down with. 12 out of 12 have been W's. Like, they've all been really nice chats. We're continuing that going into the beta. I'm hoping the momentum stays. I really do. Because if I end up not liking Path of Exile 2, if I don't like the game, like, dude.
I almost want to ask that. I was like, what if you don't like the game?
If I don't like it, that's the thing. Like, if I don't like it, I feel bad. But this is a hobby at the end of the day. Like, this is what somebody asked before I started talking to you. What do you do in your free time? I'm like, this right here, dudes. This is what I'm doing in my free time. So if I don't like it, then it's like, Talkative Try is going to talk a whole lot less. So I'm hoping I like it. But
yeah. I mean, a part of the beta is the like, oh, I don't like these things. Here's my feedback on that as well. So I'm sure we'll have some of that. Yeah, I'm also late. I ask because I'm kind of laboring over like, how do I want to approach content when the beta starts? You know, it's
like guides. I don't know. I'm not a guide guy.
Do I stream less to make more videos? Do I stream lots and just not make videos? Do I just do some highlights to stall for time until I can make some of the good high effort content I want to make? Like,
I was contemplating doing like an OG, no live stream, let's play with full commentary, all the dialogue, and just seeing how that happens. I saw a lot of people really like that with Baldur's Gate 3, and I was like, maybe I could just try it out, really get immersed into the story, explain all the mechanics as they come to me, as if I was a first-time player with the context of knowing Path of Exile 1 and obviously a lot about Path of Exile 2. That might be fun. I feel like a lot of people are going to be trying new stuff given the cavalcade of new creators that are coming here for Path of Exile too. And that was,
Uh,
I did have a question for you, Ziggy. Do you have any
yeah.
advice to like all these new folks that are coming and making stuff for PoE 2, or anybody who may want to, given all the excitement? You've been
Yeah.
doing it for so long, man. Like I see you as an idol, honestly. Like I look at your channel, I'm like, man, if that could be me in like a decade, like having such a good life with my family, with my kids, my wife, like, and doing something like this that I enjoy. I, that's what I would want to do, you know?
My advice for content creators coming into PoE 2. Oh
Yeah.
man, it's such a content creation is such a like uniquely personal thing because it's so self-taught that everyone kind of comes up with their own like weird held together by tape methods for how they do things. But I think like editing videos and stuff is really grindy. So I think you have to make sure that the specific thing that you want to go in on is something that you're super interested in, because you need to have the feel to get through that grind. That's how it is for me, I think.
You
Like
still edit all
I'm
your
not
own
gonna put that.
videos too?
It's hard to put that 20. What's that? Yeah,
You
I
edit
still do.
all your
I
own
still
videos?
do all my own editing. Yeah, I really should like at some point get like, I don't know, an editor to
It is a grind. I totally
do
agree
some
with you.
content or something. I should probably step that up a little bit. But yeah, you want to, if you're gonna spend 20 hours editing a video, which if you want to make something really good, you got to do, then you want it to be something that's really interesting. And it doesn't have to be unique as well. You don't have to be the first to make something, which is what people really make bad content doing. They try to be like the first one to post X things. Like, yeah, you soak up some views for that. But I think the long term thing, and the route I've always tried to go is like, you don't have to be the first. You have to be long term. You want to be the best.
I
Like,
love that piece of advice, dude. And it's actually something that I realized only 4 months ago. So I fully admit I used to do exactly that. I was like, okay, first, I got to be the first to talk about all this stuff. And it was actually my daughter. My daughter was born on the day of all the early access
and she came out. She
stuff.
said, "This content's trash."
Yeah, right.
And that changed it for you. Yeah.
And
First
like
words.
a lot of people made stuff. I didn't get to make any video for like 5 days. And I was like, well, shit, no one's gonna watch my video. And then I posted it. I put like nice effort into it. Some nights where I was holding her in the little sack on my chest, you know, she was just sleeping. And it did so well, dude. And it's like it just caused something to awaken inside me. Like, I don't need to be doing this like daily. If there's stuff to talk about, I put good effort into it. I don't need to rush myself. I get it out there eventually. And if it's quality, people are going to like it. And that change in approach, I mean, some people already had made their conclusions about me before I changed my approach. But ever since then, green numbers, man, you know, graphs going up and up and up. So I totally agree with that piece of advice.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's even a lot of benefit to not being first. You can identify the gaps, and you can look at all that content and you're like, I can do better than that. I didn't need to or even really want to be the first person to post some, mercenary content. But I wanted to do the best mercenary content.
Right.
Which until someone dethrones me, maybe I have managed to do. We'll see.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to say that. You gotta have a bit of ego about it. You're gonna be like, yeah, but I made the best mercenary video. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. It had the most explosions for sure.
Oh yeah.
No one came close.
Yep.
I don't know. Well, I gotta watch the rest of it.
Well, man, I'm gonna probably hop off here on stream. It was so nice talking to you. Thank you so much for making the time, Ziggy. I really, really appreciate it. Where can people check you out? YouTube, Twitch, and the like.
Yeah, I'm on YouTube, Twitch, and various social platforms. I mean, if you just search ZiggyD, generally you're gonna find who does handles and links and URLs nowadays. You just Google the creator and
I guess
just type ZiggyD PoE into Google and just
all right,
you'll get the things you need.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I love chatting with similarly enthusiastic people about things I'm interested in, because it can be hard to do that in real life. That's why I love podcasts.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thank you for sitting down. And everybody this far into the video on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and go check out ZiggyD right now. His 2 videos out on PoE 2 right now, the trials and the mercenary vids, top quality content. Some would say the best quality content right now about the trials and Merc.
I feed off them.
Thanks so much, man. It was great chatting.
See ya. Have a good one, mates.
All right.